There's several different ways that we can animate a character moving, and a walk cycle is typically a good idea if you're going to have the character doing a lot of moving in there. That way you can set it up once and then actually cycle it and have the character moving forward without having to do each individual one. Also, what's cool about it is if you were to make a video game, typically for a video game they have cycles for all of the stuff. So when a character's walking or running or jumping, they're creating these loops, creating these clips basically of the character doing it, and then as you hit the buttons on the controller, it's playing those actions back. So when you hit walk, let's say, the character is just playing this animation of a walk and he's moving forward and it makes it look like he's walking. When you jump, same thing. The character is playing this jump cycle over and over again. That's why they look pretty much the same. So for a video game type setup, you would typically see multiple kind of cycles and loops that are all mixed into it. They may have a walk cycle, a run cycle, a standing still cycle, any of that stuff. This could apply also to, I thought I had that up, to movies as well. Come on. Crowd simulator. If you saw Lord of the Rings, they have huge crowds in them, like thousands and thousands of people fighting. These things here are no more than that exact same thing you would find in a video game, except a lot more high resolution and a lot more stuff happening. When Lord of the Rings came out, before that, what they would do is they would actually videotape a crowd of people, then they would duplicate that crowd over and over again and have actual live people. With Lord of the Rings, they developed this software called Massive, and Massive is what does all the calculations. They basically give each one of those characters what's called digital DNA, and that digital DNA causes them to do what they're doing. A funny story about when they first did it, they made the orcs too smart, and so when they saw all the elves going after them, the orcs just turned around and ran away. So they made them stupider and a little bit more brave, and then they got into an actual fight. This is a incredibly complex software to use, but the interface is pretty simple. Yes, sir.
Do they have any footage of that, them running away?
I believe they do on the behind-the-scenes stuff. Okay. This is what the software looks like for Massive. So you'll see all these little nodes. If you do any kind of node stuff, that's pretty much what it is, right? And you're dealing with these low-res things, and then you can transform those people or those nodes into actual people that would then do different things. There's a couple free ones that you could play with if you did want to use this kind of thing. One of them is Golem. No relationship to Lord of the Rings stuff, it's just called that. But basically, these are all digital people here, and what you do is you basically take a person, put it into this system, and then based off of what you told it to do, it'll do it. So if it's walking, it knows to play this walk cycle to get the character to walk. If it's running, it switches to running. If it's supposed to be standing or whatever, you can trigger it that way too. There's a huge market for this kind of thing, so that you can get this kind of movement in there without having to have an entire crowd of people that you've videotaped. It also has features of giving people random stuff. So this guy in the red shirt here, 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 and here, I believe that's the same guy with different, here he's shorts on, here he has half-whip pants, here he has full pants. Same guy, just different stuff, and then you could have them do different things. One of their tutorials on their site is to actually have them doing the wave. So you basically create a rig that as this thing sweeps by these people, they do the wave and the stands, and then they sit back down. It's pretty sweet. It's a fun thing to do, and it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to get it going. You'll see more of those simulators becoming a lot more used, especially locally. A lot of that stuff has to be outsourced just because of the complexity of just doing that. Our walk cycle has a lot of different avenues that we could take it, and that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to go to my folder here and find Jerry. Here. And Jerry. That's the one I want. Make sure all my things are set up. Yes, they are. And I'm just going to delete some of this other stuff that I have inside my scene here that I don't really want. All right, there we go. Okay, so you'll use the rig that you have, the one that you would use to do your posing. I'm just going to lock some of my background geometry here so I don't accidentally select that. And I'll also lock Jerry's geometry so I don't accidentally select any of that. Now with a cycle, we're going to focus on just the lower part, then the upper part, then the head, and then go from there. So I'm going to go to lower body first. I'm going to set up my time slider here. This is going to be a say 60 frame animation just for easy math, and then we can adjust it from there. Jerry, ready to walk. There we go. As a not fun fact, Jerry in Maya 2019 likes to crash, so if you do download 2019, just be aware that so far Jerry doesn't seem to like it. Where are you at, Jerry? There you are. All right. So the way that a walk cycle works is we're going to create a cycle. A cycle means that the start and the end have to be equal. If they're not equal, we don't have a cycle. We have a one instance that will then not work correctly. So whatever frame 0 looks like, or frame 1, I don't know why 0 is my first one. Whatever frame 1 looks like, frame 60 will look the exact same way. Okay. You need to use reference, especially because this is probably your first time you've done a walk cycle in 3D. This is a good one. This is, it used to be called Idle Worm, but the website changed how they do their stuff, so I always have to find it through Google Images now. But these are the main points that we want to do. So our frame 1 should look like this. Our frame 60, which is the exact same pose, should look like that. And if we cut that in half, basically we're just swapping everything. So here the right leg is back, the left leg is forward. Here the right leg is forward and the left leg is back, and then here they're swapped again, okay? A couple things to note when we do a walk cycle. It is not just about moving the feet or moving the hands. It's about moving the entire body, just like your poses. Pay attention next time you walk. It's not just your legs, your hips are moving too, and your shoulders, and it's always going to be opposite. So if I put my right leg forward, my left shoulder comes forward, okay? So we'll have to pay attention to that because you don't want to get confused. All right, so I'm going to set up Jerry into his start of his walk. Now he's going to walk in place, so it's going to look like he's on a treadmill. That's how you set up your cycle. So I'm going to just put his feet in a rough position of where I think his feet should be. And then I'm going to grab his hips and push this down. All the controls that I'm dealing with right now are on lower body. Okay, so this foot here, you'll see that his foot actually like curls up when I go like that, but his leg is straight. I never want the leg to be straight. So I'm going to go to the roll on Jerry. Whatever yours is, that's what you would use. And that's what's going to give Jerry, the bend in his foot. Okay, now one thing I don't like about Jerry is when I do the roll, his foot is actually off the ground. With no roll, his heel is flat. I'm not sure what the purpose of that is, except just to make it more difficult for me to actually animate it, but whatever. So I'm going to go to the roll here. I'm going to push it up some. And now it's not. I didn't do anything different. There it goes. I just didn't go far enough. Okay. So now I'm going to put this on the ground. And then this foot here is going to be going the opposite direction. So if I take the roll backwards, he actually has like a heel part of the roll. If I didn't have that, I would just use rotate. That's an acceptable way too. So looking at this contact here, let me just make this image bigger. This foot in the back is up on the ball of the foot, and the front foot is on its heel. I have that so far. His hips are also twisted. Whichever foot is back, that's the hip is twisted back towards that one. So I also want to go to his hips here and rotate his hips so that it is further back. I don't want to go crazy with this, maybe like 15 degrees. And then I also want to kind of position it, let's say vertically, where it makes sense. As you're walking, if you look at where your hips are in relationship to your feet, it's not perfectly centered. Typically your hips are going to be just slightly forward of where your center line is. If I drew a line from the toe here to the heel there, that would probably be about this point, and the hips and the body is a bit more forward. He's also leaning a little bit more forward too. So I want to push the hips a little bit more forward. That looks good there. This heel is probably up a little bit too much. Let's say a -3. Nope, I think -5 was good. He just wants to be a little bit more forward maybe. There we go. And then let's push this a little bit more forward. Cool. All right. I'm not going to worry about the hands. The hands will do whatever they're going to do. I'm only worried about his feet at the moment. Another thing that we'll kind of pay attention to is typically when you are walking, your feet are never perfectly straight. Typically your feet are out slightly. If you're pigeon-toed, your feet go in. Most people have their feet out slightly, which means your knees are also out slightly. I typically at the end will do that. I like to keep it straight here, and at the end I'll just edit the graph to push them out further, okay? So I'm going to go and set a keyframe. I'm on lower body, I hit S. I should see something that says result 36 or however many keyframes or items I have there. Everything I put into that character set should set a keyframe. I'm going to go to frame 1, set a keyframe, make sure I'm at frame 60, and also set a keyframe. Remember, 60 and 1 should be the exact same setup. All right. Now I'm going to go to frame 30. This is why we do 60, because it's easy math. And I'm just going to swap all the stuff. So instead of this being a 15-degree rotation on the hips, it's going to be -15. And instead of this foot being all the way back here, that foot's going to be forward, and then this foot will be back. Now, if I were to put this foot here, and I put this foot, let's say, there, those are not in the same spot. And what would happen is it would look like one stride, like his left leg strides forward further, and his right foot doesn't go as far. It would look weird. It would look off, right? Like you're stepping really far with one foot, but then the other foot is really short. So you want to get this pretty close to where each side is. So I kind of cheat with this. Let me go to the side view. Is I'll do this. I'll zoom in so I can see where the front of his foot is, almost touching that edge. And the back of the foot is almost touching the other side. There we go. And now I have a good lineup for when I switch these. So I just bring this one forward, switch that roll. I think it was -5 in the other one. There we go. And raise it up some. And now I can grab the other one. That's the hard part, is grabbing the other one. And then slide it back. I think this was, I don't know, 8, I think, something like that. Bring the heel back here, push it down so it's hitting the ground. There we go, pretty close. Hit S to set a key. Okay, so now if I were to hit play, I get this. Okay, notice how I didn't go to frame 1 and then frame 5 and then frame 10. I'm setting my bounds and then going into the middle and cutting the difference and then putting it where it needs to go. We never want to go here and set up this pose, then set up that one, then set up this one, then set up that one. For this kind of animation, we want to set up those major poses and then start working our way in towards the middle. Okay, or work towards the middle and then go outward. Because this gives us a nice smooth motion. Now we know where Jerry's feet are supposed to be, roughly around each frame. Okay, and you can see his hips are rotating, his feet are sliding. That's good. So now I'm just going to cut the difference again. So here is my contact point here. Here's the contact point there. I'm going to cut the difference and go to this passing point. So roughly 15 frames is the difference between 1 and 30. I have to make sure I know which one is which. There we go. Okay, whichever one was in the back then is now going to be up. So looking at this, you can see that the foot is pretty close to the center of the body, maybe a little bit further back even, and it's bent down. So I'm going to set my roll to 0. I'm actually going to set the roll to 0, rotate it. The hip line right here and here is about the same. So contact, passing, and then contact over here are all the same hip line. He doesn't go up and down yet. That's pretty much straight. So I'm going to leave that there. I may raise it up a little bit. I think he's probably a little bit too squashed there. There we go. Feels better. My guy just has long legs compared to their image that they used. This is further back. This is more rotated. All right, that looks good. I'm going to make sure that the other foot is on the ground, so it shouldn't have any roll. So I'll put that to 0. I'll make sure it's perfectly flat on the ground, which it's not. It needs to come up a little bit. And then I'll set a key. Then I'm going to go to 45, which is the middle of these two, and do the same thing with the other foot. So I click on the other foot, raise it up. Make sure I grab the other foot. I'll grab it here. There we go. Set the roll to 0. Rotate this down like that. Pull it back a little bit. Pull this up a little bit. Set this one's roll to 0. Put it flat on the ground. So that looks good. Don't think that you have to get these perfect right now. The idea is set those poses, then you can come back and tweak them. The big mistake people make is trying to get it perfect and then not being able to progress. And once you get the overall, you can go back and tweak this for 15 hours if you need to. All right, so now let's take a look and see what it's doing. So we'll hit play. There you go. And so now we see what's happening here. Now it looks pretty good. What happens typically when we rotate or we pick up our foot to move it is the foot is not leading the way. Even though we're picking up the foot, it's our thigh. So our thigh lifts up, it rotates, and that brings the rest of the leg, and the foot is typically like flicked out and like thrown down. I'm exaggerating it, but that's typically what happens. So you'll see here the thigh is actually leading the way, and that's what you want. That's actually a pretty decent walk cycle. Alrighty. Make it a little bit more dynamic though. All right, so now I'm going to add these recoils in here, which is this. So it's going to basically, he's going to be like squashing down. So as his foot comes in and he steps, his body is going to come down a little bit and we'll create this basically like this swooping motion that happens. So I'm going to go to roughly halfway here. I'm going to put this foot flat on the ground. I'm going to squish him down a little bit more here. And I'm going to reset the roll on this one. And I think that should be good. That looks like that's what that's doing there. It's flat, yes. Okay, so I'll set a key. I'm going to go to this point here, about 37 or 38. Do the same thing on this side. Set the roll to 0. Set the roll to 0. Make sure he's flat, yes. And then squish him down just a little bit. Okay, you'll find these subtle movements are huge things to make your animations feel a lot smoother. All right, so that's looking good. Now we're going to do the high point, which is this. So he should basically be, his foot is now in front, his leg is in front, his foot is back, and he's basically on the ball of his foot there. So again, we'll kind of cut the difference here. I'll pull this up. I'm going to rotate it down a little bit like that. He's going to be up higher. Never lock out the leg like that. That's a bad thing. You want to keep it so his leg is straight, or appearing straight, but not actually like fully straight. And then we'll give him a little bit more roll on his foot there. And then we'll set a key, and let's do the same thing on the other side. So this one here, raise it up, pull it in, The roll goes away, a little bit of rotate. Maybe tuck this in some more. Maybe give this a little bit more roll. And then lift that up. There we go. All right, so now I'll rewind it, hit play. There we go. Now, this is a slow walk cycle, and it's fine that it's slow. I'm going to show you how we can speed it up afterwards, so it's not a huge deal. But that looks pretty good. You'll see I only have however many keyframes there. I'm just emulating what I'm seeing here and paying attention to what the feet are doing, what the hips are doing, what the knees are doing, how high up and down he is, and that's pretty much it. Okay? And that's typically the hardest part, is getting the legs. The arms are pretty easy. For the arms, I'm going to switch to my camera here. And then I'm going to switch this to upper body. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to frame 1, set up what I want the arms to do, copy that at frame 60, then go in the middle and then tweak that. For his arms, I want to not use IK. I'm going to use FK for this. And I believe I've hidden my controls. There they are. So I'm going to make sure that I have FK turned on. There it is. And make sure that these are set up on my character set, which they aren't. So I'm just going to grab all 3 of these. And then just add those into that character set. All right. So that worked? Yes. Okay. Let me pull this down. I'm going to get his hand into a somewhat relaxed position. I'm not fully, I wish he had one more thumb control on here. It seems kind of limiting, but whatever. Give him a little bit of a curl. Push this thumb down some more. I want to set this up beforehand because once he starts walking, all those keyframes are going to be set for his entire hand. So you'll see I'm just giving it some slight movement just so it doesn't feel so mechanical. There we go. All right. I'm going to bend his arms a little bit, so we'll just bend at the elbows here, bend at the elbow there. All right, now let's see what the arms are doing. So pose 1 here, right leg is back, right arm is forward, okay, and right shoulders and hips are forward. So this is his. I'm going to rotate this forward a bit. And let's say -15. I think I went +15 here. Yep, +15 there. So I'll go -15 here. I'm going to rotate that arm forward, so you'll see it's kind of up. This is a very marchy kind of walk anyway, but we'll make it marchy. There we go. A little bit of rotation on the wrist. Your wrist typically doesn't go too far that way, even though the rig can. All right, and then the other arm you'll see is behind him. So I'm going to grab this arm and put it behind him. This. You see how I just switched between these two to get that to set up. I'm also going to grab these shoulder joints and rotate that back some. Grab this shoulder joint, rotate that forward some. And that means probably that I can take that other shoulder joint and maybe not rotate it so far that way. There we go. All right, he looks very serious, but that'll work. All right. So I'm going to set a key. I'm going to go up to frame 60, set another key, and then I'm going to go to frame 30 and just swap it. Okay. This is what the pose looks like when he's walking with the same arm, same side. So this arm's forward, this leg is forward. That looks weird, obviously. So let's switch it. And I'm just basically just flipping these values. So now it's +15 for that one. And there it is. Let's take this one and rotate it back. We'll take this shoulder and pull it back some. Take this hand. And that's going to be very uncomfortable, but we'll adjust it. that's going to go forward. This will go forward. That'll go up. I think maybe a little bit more room here on the shoulder area. There we go. All right, so that's good, so I'll set a key. Now if I hit play, we'll just watch what happens. And you'll see just by this being an FK setup, that is pretty much that's it. That's all I have to do for the arms. Okay, now it is very, like I said, marchy. It's not very like fluid. I'm going to delay his arms a little bit, I think. So I'm going to go to, let's say, 15 and just rotate whichever one's going forward. All right, so that one's going forward. So I'm going to delay this arm a little bit just by straightening it out. I'll do the same thing at 45 with the other one. Just go here, pull it down, set a key. There you go. So now again, just like the legs, it feels like the arms are kind of guiding the way, the upper arm is guiding the way for the rest of it. Okay. Now, if there was anything I needed to do on the head, I would do that on the head too. With Jerry, he looks like he's pretty much straight on. There doesn't look like there's a whole lot of adjustment that I need to do with it, but let's just say I do. I'm going to go to Jerry's head. I'm going to go to frame 1, put the head where I want it. So I'll look at the front view. He's looking dead on, but he's kind of looking down. There you go. He's shocked, I guess. And he has like this sneer about him. There we go. Thank you. All right, so that's going to be Jerry's walking face. And then just to contrast that, we'll just kind of adjust this side. There we go. Yours will be better looking. I'm just kind of throwing something in there just to show this. They just need a standard kind of face on that. They don't need anything, crazy. There you go. So he's kind of weird. All right, so I'm going to set a keyframe on Jerry here. I'm going to go to 60, set a keyframe, and then I'm going to go to frame 30. And everything's still good, so I'm going to set a key. I'm going to go to 15, and just for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to rotate his head like, oops, not like that. Where's his head one? He has a couple different ones. I think this is his squash. No, that's a stretch. I think this, there it is. So I'm going to rotate his head like that at 15, and then at 45, I'll rotate it the other way. I'm going to eventually take that off, but I just want you to see how this works. All right. So my cycle part is all done. I have everything animated. If I hit play, I can see how this is going to flow from one loop to the next loop to the next. If we notice, there is a small stutter right at the end of this, and that's because frame 60 and frame 1 are the exact same thing, so it's like duplicating that. If I take this to frame 59, we don't see it, and we should see a nice smooth transition of how he's walking. Okay, cool. All right, so the next stage in this is I'm going to go into animation editors, and I'm going to go to what's called the Trax editor. This is where we're able to take that clip and actually make it something that we can loop over and over and over again, not just by limiting our cycle here, but actually like looping it. So I'm going to go to the lower body Jerry. I'm going to go to create, and I'm going to create an animation clip. And I'll call this legs or lower body. There we go. Lower body underscore walk. I'm going to say animation curve. And let me reset this just to make sure that my settings are the same. Yeah, they were. Okay. Lower body walk. Okay. I'm going to hit apply. And what happens here is that inside of this, we should see that lower body listing. I'm going to say auto load under list, and there it is. Now I'm going to grab the upper body and do the same thing. So I switch to upper body. I call it upper body walk, hit apply. I switch to head. And I do head, create clip. Okay. Now, only one of these is showing up at a time. If I switch this to my main Jerry rig, character set, you'll see all three of them list here. Now, if we look, it starts at frame 1 and it goes to frame 60. If I grab all of these, you can see how there's an arrow here where I can drag this out. This is scaling that clip. So now it's going to take Jerry 120 frames to do one cycle. Okay, so now if I just scoot this over, there we go. Set this to, I'm going to just set to 500 for now. And then hit play, we'll see super slow motion Jerry doing a walk cycle. Okay, so think of the dope sheet where we can grab keyframes and move them around. Well, now these are actually like clips. They're like locked in. And I can move them wherever I want and adjust them however I want. So this arrow squishes it so that we can make it faster or slower. So if I go this way, and let's say I make it 40 frames instead of 60, well, now we have something that's a bit more appropriate to a walk cycle. I'll even go down to 30. And that's a pretty good walk cycle, okay? Now, we can also, if I grab these and I come over here, you'll see there's one that says post cycle. And what that means is it's going to duplicate that loop. So right now he's cycling one time. So I'm going to put this to 10. And now if I go and hit play, you'll see Jerry is going to be walking very quickly over and over and over again. And then once we get to the end of that, he just stops walking. Now there's obviously stuff I have to fix. His head going back and forth, that doesn't make sense. His head shouldn't go back and forth. If I click on his head, this is where I animated it. If I go to the graph editor, there's nothing listed here. Okay, those keyframes are no longer part of Jerry anymore. They're now going to be inside the Trax editor under head. So if I click on this, then go to the graph editor, now I can see all of the keyframes here, and then I can just delete the ones that don't apply to what I need to do. Oops. So now his head is not going to rotate like crazy anymore. Now he's a happy guy, sort of. His head is still messed up. Okay, so I'm going to go to lower body. I'm going to go to the graph editor, and here's all the keyframes. Oh, I don't know why it's spanning over two monitors here. What are you doing to me? There we go. So here's his leg walk cycle. I'm going to just go through, and what you want to do is see if there's any spots in here that look like they're don't belong or things we can iron out. So on here, these are his legs moving. If I eliminate these inner points, I'll get a nice smoother transition of how he's moving his feet from frame to frame. In some cases, I don't want to delete things. Like, let's say I just wiped out all these keyframes. Well, I may ruin some of that animation down there. If I delete these and I still maintain a nice smooth graph, that's fine. I can do that. Okay? So I'm just going through and kind of cleaning up anything that might need some adjustment. That's needed. That's fine. Here's another one where I'm just going to go through and just delete those extra keyframes out. Delete that one. There's another one right here. What is that? Right there. That one's pretty crazy, so I'll leave that alone, leave that alone. Okay. So rewind it again, and now we have Jerry still walking nice and smooth. Here's a bit of a stomp there. I can go into the graph editor and maybe fix some of that, but I think overall it's good. And I think he's probably going a little bit too fast. I think 30 is probably a bit too much. Let's go here, here, and here, and take the scale up to 0.75. 0.65. There we go. All right, now if I need to adjust anything, I can still do that. Like I said, I wanted to take the feet and kind of angle them outward. If I grab one of his feet and I just kind of rotate it, I can see that this is the rotate Y. If I hit play, though, it jumps back to where it is. So I'm going to deselect, grab his lower body, go to the graph editor, and try to find that rotate Y, which is right here and right, that's the right leg. There's the left leg. This keeps stretching out too big. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the whole graph and then just adjust it. So I'm in the Move tool and I'm moving this. Let me zoom out some so I can move this a little bit quicker. Okay, so now you can see both feet are rotating in the same direction. So let me grab one at a time. This one first. There we go. And then I'll grab the other one, which is here. And do the same thing the other direction. There we go. I may also want to give a little bit more distance on his legs. He's a little bit too close. So I'm going to grab his Translate X on his feet. And then just adjust, too far over. Just adjust that a little bit. Translate X. And like I said, I could have done this, when I was first animating it, but I find it easier to keep it straight and then come back and do this. All right, so now it's a much more appropriate walk. Now it do look like we have a little bit of popping in the knees. You can see right there, there, there. He's popping. So I'm going to go back to my Trax editor, go back to the that's time editor. Lower body, graph editor. I'm going to go back to the hips, which is called root. And wherever it pops, I'm just going to scoot that down a little bit more. So if I rewind this to the beginning and just watch where his leg pops, right there, or right here, there it is. You can see just by adjusting it in there, I can make sure his leg doesn't do that. And probably the same thing right here. This just needs to come down more. It's weird. There it is. Good. All right, so now that's the walk cycle. That's all we have to do for the actual animation part of this. For the rendering part, what you're going to be doing is animating it in one of two ways. One way, you would set up the side view of your camera and render that, set up the front view of your camera, render that, and you'd put those both together inside of After Effects. So you would have basically what it would look like from the front and what it would look like from the side. That way, when I'm looking at this, I can see what are his legs doing in the side, and then as it spins around, what are his legs doing from the front. The other way to do it, and this is kind of like the, I think, fancier way to do it, I'm going to hide the ground plane here. I'm going to create a platform. There's the platform. And then I'm just going to add a bevel. So I'm going to go to Edge, double click, hold down Shift, hold down right click, and then go to Bevel. And then I'm just going to add a 0.1 offset, 0.2 offset there, and then 5 segments, let's say. And then I'm just going to delete this bottom piece. There we go. And then hit 3, and then we have this nice smooth platform. Okay. Now I'm going to take this and do a little animated camera going from one side of Jerry to the other side. Now our animation is going to span all the way to about 300, because that's when the animation stops. So I'm going to go grab the platform, go to Visualize, go to Create Turntable. Let me set up my camera how I want this to look first. So something like this. Let's go 60 focal length, maybe more. There we go. Make sure Jerry's still in frame. This is going to be, let's say, 300 frames, counterclockwise, turntable. So now when I hit play, you can see how the turntable is basically going around my character. Now we don't want to go all the way around because it's kind of weird to go, you know, on the back side of it. We just want to go from one side to the other. So I'm going to hit the attribute editor, go to group 3. This is what it does. It creates this turntable camera. The turntable camera is just locked in, and the group is actually rotating around. So I'm going to go right-click on this, go to this output, and just say I want you to go from 0, which is where it starts, to let's say negative 135. Maybe that's too far. Negative 120. Maybe 90. Maybe 100. There we go. That's good. And then I'm going to take my tangents here and just type in linear. This here is the same way of going into the graph editor, grabbing this and making this linear by clicking that button that's not showing up there. There we go. So now I have this as my walk cycle. And now I'd render out all 300 frames of this and then put that in After Effects, make that a movie. Okay, and then like I said, the other way to do it is you have a camera that's from the front. Let me hide this and bring back a ground plane because that would be the appropriate setup for that. I'll change my focal length, let's say 90. I'm going to turn on my resolution gate and make sure this is set up to be the correct perspective. There we go. And basically the front will be on one side. So this is how I want to render this, is the front view will be like this. The side view would be on that side, and in After Effects we put them together into one comp so I can see them side by side. So then I would make a new camera or duplicate perspective 2. That's an easier way to do it. Look through perspective 3. Oops, that's not it. Switch this to like a side view and then put him here. And then to line things up easier, I'm going to do a split view and put one camera here, this is 2, put the other camera here, this is 3. And I want to line up where this border is. That way when I go into After Effects and I'm putting them together, it makes it a lot more pleasant looking. There we go. That looks pretty close. Okay, I'll play it, make sure he doesn't go out of the frame. He doesn't go into this view. Make sure he doesn't play out of the frame. He doesn't. Good. When I render this one, because of it being 2 cameras, show objects, cameras, come on. There you go. I'm going to grab my cameras, go in the attribute editor, and just turn off their ability to render out. So this camera is not renderable. Camera 1 is not renderable. My turntable is not renderable. Only camera 2 and 3 are renderable. When I go into my render settings, I just replace this. So I would say Jerry, walk cycle. Now I put an underscore, a right click, and then you could insert the camera name. That way when it renders, it'll actually render out with whatever you've called the camera. And so this is my front, walk, and then this is my sidewalk. And so now front camera will be called Jerry underscore walk cycle underscore front walk, and then sidewalk also. It's starting at frame 1, going to 300. My render settings are turned up. Sure. Motion blur, I've enabled that. And then when I go to my rendering, and I say render sequence, I'll make sure that this says all render enabled cameras. And that way it'll render out just those render enabled cameras and nothing else. Okay? Hit the go and then there it goes. Cool? So that's the walk cycle. It's not terribly long. It's very simple, very straightforward. If you are good enough at your poses to understand how the character moves, it's simply just these poses over and over and over again, and then getting them to blend nicely together. we could spend more time on a walk cycle, but I want you just to be able to see how the walk cycle works. And again, you can look at different references, but that other one is like perfect because it goes from the start to the end. And it also may help if you go to YouTube and you watch walk cycle reference. Now, just so you can see where this could also go after the fact, let me scoot this up back to here. If you do have a walk cycle like this, and this would not work for something that's more production like a movie, but this would work for something if you're doing just like I need a bunch of people walking kind of thing. You can take this, like on my character I have this main controller that I can move around. Most of them typically do. If I just go in here, make sure I'm not on any of these character sets, and just set a keyframe on this, go up to let's say 240, scoot him forward, set a keyframe. It's not going to look perfect, but you know, it'll be good enough for some visualization stuff. Oops, let me also make sure my graph is linear so he doesn't like pick up speed. He should be going the same speed. Oh, there we go. Apparently Jerry does not like Maya 2018 either because he just froze. Yes, he did. Details, Maya, and yes. But what we can do is actually animate him walking forward, and that will give the illusion that he's moving forward even though he's not actually walking forward. He's just walking as like a separate thing. Luckily, I think I saved. My computer. Let's try that again. I'm going to go here. Set a keyframe, go up a bit. Set another keyframe. And I'm just going to use my item there to set that to linear. Alright. So now when I hit play, you'll see Jerry moving along. Now he's going way too slow, so I just need to have him move a lot further. And this is why it doesn't typically work, because between strides there's a little bit of a hold there where he's not moving as quick. And so he's still moving even with that hold. So if you had just a simple animation, you just need a bunch of people to look like they're walking, this could work. I think I'd still need to adjust that speed. You could also use under the animation form. Constrain, there it is. Yes. There it is. Under key redirect, they moved it. This creates a little turntable. So basically I can rotate this around so that as Andy's walking, I can have it move so that it looks like he's like turning. So if I go back here, move this to like where his foot is, and then I set a keyframe on this, scooch up until this is about there, and give it a little rotate. You'll see how it rotates the entire character that far. So basically I can take my character's walk cycle and have them turn. Again, it's not going to look perfect, but if I just need them to change direction all of a sudden, I can do that with my walk cycle. Okay, so it has lots of uses. Obviously, you can keep playing with those kinds of things. All right, so that's the walk cycle. Any questions on the walk cycle yet?